Thank you, and thank you for your time. I'm only speaking for myself, I want to be clear, not for an organization, although I have organizational affiliations. I hope the Commission will report that this is an opportunity to strengthen democracy, and especially if voter initiative that I favor, which is my biggest hope coming out of the convention, is also approved. And I think we need to strengthen democracy. Rhode Island is not working so well right now, and it's not just the high unemployment. It's public disillusion with government, it's public cynicism. We're rated as one of the most unhappy states. People are very negative about our government, and that takes a toll on our quality of life, our economic development. And I believe that we need to improve civic engagement, and this is an opportunity to do that. I think that there is legitimate concern about civil rights. I'm a proud member of the ACLU, and I would defend their right to disagree with me. The fact is, though, that I don't think at these times and the nature of Rhode Island that there's much threat. That's my judgment. I've lived in other states, New York, California, Florida, Ohio, and briefly in Texas and Colorado. And my judgment is the nature of Rhode Islanders, although there are a few that hate minorities and immigrants and women, that's not Rhode Island. Rhode Island is a good place because people are relatively tolerant. I don't think we need to worry about it. On the other hand, a constitutional convention, and if voter initiative came out of it, is an opportunity to expand our human rights. The right to an education, the right to basic health care, the right to, for the terminally ill. Would the Assembly deal with some of those things? I think this is an opportunity for the public to move that kind of concern forward. Civil rights is not the only issue that might come out of it. Another reason Rhode Islanders are disengaged from civic activity is the perception of corruption. This is an opportunity to strengthen anti-corruption laws and ethics laws. I think we need to do that. I don't think the Assembly people are bad people, but nobody likes to have oversight, like an ethics commission oversight over themselves, and to voluntarily add to the ethics commission power is just not in the nature of how things work. Same thing with, I'm not sure what I think about line item veto for the governor, but I do think that it's the nature of the General Assembly not to want to give up power to the governor. It's not because they're bad people, it's just the way things work. I think we could, if we had a constitutional convention, we could have a legitimate debate about where there might be a consequence on line item veto for the governor. I hope we have that debate. I don't think we'll have a serious debate in the Assembly. The same thing with General Assembly rules. As I understand the Constitution now, the rules that give us, for example, roll call voting results, they're not in the Constitution. They're just Assembly rules. Another Assembly could abolish them, and we wouldn't have a right to know how people voted. The rules could be suspended, and all those midnight sessions the last 2 nights, believe me, the public is very cynical about that. Again, not because we think there's bad people trying to get things done, but it's a bad process, but it's consistent with the Assembly establishing and suspending its own rules. A constitutional convention might have a chance to address this kind of thing, and this is the kind of thing Rhode Islanders want so that we can have more confidence in their government. I happen to believe personally in activist government that helps the needy, protects the environment, builds infrastructure, provides education, and so on. And all these negative things are getting in the way of getting that accomplished. And finally, I'll say I'm a longtime member of the pro-choice community. And frankly, we're only one Supreme Court justice away that the next president might pick from overturning our federal rights on that issue. And I asked the pro-choice community, who would they rather have in charge in Rhode Island if that should happen? The Assembly as it is now, or the voters and the people of the state of Rhode Island? I personally my judgment is, from a pro-choice perspective, I'd rather have the public have a check on the Assembly if necessary. And a constitutional convention and voter initiative gives us a chance to do that. Otherwise, we have no redress. Thank you for your time. I appreciate the time that you people are putting in on this on a nice summer day. Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments for this witness? Rep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Schiller, great job. I mean, you know, you really spoke from all different sides of the aisle. But my question is, you know, we hear the pros and the cons and how, you know, the sky could be falling and God forbid that we have people want something like this, that it could have negative consequences of immigration or women's rights or reproductive or gay rights or whatever the case might be. So how do you propose that we weed out the good from the bad that can come from something like this?
I think we have to make a judgment about whether there's more potential benefits than there are potential risks, and obviously reasonable people could disagree. I look around at Massachusetts, a very similar state that does have voter initiative, and I don't think anyone could argue that there's a lot of anti-women, anti-gay, anti-immigrant, anti-black, anti-Jewish, or any of those things going on in Massachusetts where the people do have some rights. And I think Rhode Islanders are the same. I have confidence in Rhode Islanders to defend each other. And also I believe the times have changed a bit. With Snowden revelations, the public is more worried about protecting their rights rather than taking them away, as maybe after 9/11 or things like that, or the high crime of the 80s. So I just make a judgment, it's my judgment, that it's more important to strengthen democracy, and I hope that will be the overriding message of the Commission, that this is an opportunity to strengthen the democratic spirit in Rhode Island.
And for the record, I don't know about any legislator that's in love with the 3 a.m. sessions, because my mother was right. Nothing good happens after midnight.
Good for you.
Representative.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Schiller, for your testimony. And you're spot on. Civic engagement is certainly important, and yourself and other people have raised the judicial reform, the ethics reform, and voter initiative as important issues. But to what my colleague's talking about, isn't it true, though, that once a convention is called, although we're listening to the testimony of the people of Rhode Island, and this commission will frame some suggestions, but that convention, once it's called, those delegates will set their own agenda. So whether it's, as you say, social issues or gun rights being taken away, I mean, there's no control as to what percolates at a convention, correct?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And again, you have to make a judgment whether that's a real threat or just, you know, or there will be a few people that will want to do those bad things, but you have to make a judgment about where Rhode Islanders are. And my judgment is that those things won't fly. They're not flying, as I said, in neighboring states where people already have some of those rights to do that. I just don't think things are working that well, and this is an opportunity to improve it. And I know that you're in the Assembly, and I don't mean to criticize the people in it, because I know a fair number, having been a volunteer lobbyist a bit, and I know most of them really do want to do the right thing. But it's just the nature of things that it's reluctance to give up power. There's so many ways that happens. You know, there's legislative grants. You know, is a thing that has. I mean, even within the Assembly, there's a need for democratic improvement, because there's so much power in just a couple of leaders, and things like legislative grants, which are legal. I mean, things like that could be addressed, perhaps, so that there's more democracy within the Assembly. Mm-hmm. I guess I segued from your question a bit, but
it's okay. But again, you get to the point that anything could percolate and anything can come out. Thank you very much.
But as has been pointed out, we still have the U.S. constitutional protections, but I think fundamentally we have the protections of the decency of the Rhode Island people.
And it would be wrong for the voice of the people not to be heard. Thank you.
Thank you,
Chairman.
Are there any other questions or comments? Ms. Jones.
This is really just a comment. I think there has to be some distinction between what's appropriate to be taken up in a constitutional convention versus it being a fix-all for everything. And So that is just something in my own mind that I've been trying to sort out. But I think that the expectation has to be what is appropriate to do through the Constitution rather than through just regular legislation.
I just want to say I agree with you, and that's why I kept mentioning voter initiative, because some of the things I was saying could only come that way, not through the convention itself. But see, voter initiative is another power the Assembly won't give up because it takes power from the Assembly to propose things and gives some of that power to the people. That's something that they're not going to approve, at least from all I've pursued that particular issue. It's basically on the back burner now because of the nature of people holding on to power. But voter initiative gives us a chance to do the catch-all things, such as, for example, rights of the terminally ill, as happened in Oregon.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Mr. Freyas.
Quick comments. First, thank you for bringing up voter initiative. I think, as you noted, it's in Massachusetts. It's worked, and it has not caused significant amounts of problems. Two, thank you for pointing out that the protections of the U.S. Constitution will not be impacted or affected by whatever comes out of this state constitutional convention. And three, thank you for pointing out that in the end, it's the voters that decide what is approved and what is not approved, and that the voters of Rhode Island have shown for a great period of time a great deal of decency in regards to these types of issues and sensitivity, and I thank you for bringing that out as well.
And I thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments for this witness?